In our first example here, I see right away that my main chain is pretty clear. And off of that main chain, I have a CH3, and as part of the chain, I have a double bond. So I've identified all of the things besides the hydrogens that are important for me here. Now I just need to start putting them together into the name. And I will look to see where I would start my naming from, and it really seems like I could go either way. I could go 1, 2, 3, 4, and I've got the alkene starting on the 2, or I could go 1, 2, 3, 4 in the opposite direction, and not only would I have the starting of that alkene on that second carbon, but also the methyl. So I would say that both answers would be appropriate, but I would go from the one that has the methyl and the alkene on it. So let's take a look here. The CH3 is called methyl, and I have to identify which carbon it's on. It is on the second carbon. And then my alkene has a suffix of ene. And again, I need to identify what carbon that would be on, because it could either be on the first or the second. So it's going to be a 2-ene. And then I need to identify what the prefix is for 4, and that's a bute. So I put it all together. My extra group coming off goes first, so 2-methyl. And then I have 2-butene. Or if I prefer, I could go 2-methyl, bute, 2-ene. Either way is appropriate. Our next one is going in the opposite direction. I need to pick apart this name and start drawing it all out. And when I'm doing that, I generally like to go from the prefix of the total number of carbons in the main chain. That's generally my easiest way of doing it. So I see a hex, which means 6 carbons. So I'm going to start there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, then I see I have a whole bunch of other things going on. I see I have a 3 in front of that hex, which means it indicates to me that there's something special. And I can look at the suffix and know what that special thing is. I have an OL. Whenever I have an OL, I have a hydroxyl group or an alcohol. And that 3 tells me that that alcohol is on my 3rd carbon. So I'm just going to start counting from the left, because that's where I naturally defer to. So 1, 2, 3, here we're going to put an OH. And so that's taking care of this part of the name. I have the 3-hexanol right now. But I have more to my name. I have a 3-ethyl as well. So on my 3rd carbon, 1, 2, 3 again. This time I have an ethyl, which is 2 carbons. 2 carbons in an eth. The YL means that it's coming off of the main chain. So right here I have a CH2, that's my 1st carbon. And then my 2nd carbon is a CH3. And then I need to go through and add in the rest of my hydrogens, because I need to complete my entire drawing. And now pause the video and try to do this as a line angle diagram. Okay, the line angle diagram for this is going to have 6 carbons, that hex again, 6 carbons, with each of the carbons as a node in the lines. So I can imagine a dot being my 1st carbon, then I go to my 2nd carbon, third carbon, fourth carbon, fifth carbon, and this would be my sixth carbon. So there's my 6 carbons, and we said on the first, second, third, I've got 2 things going on. I've got an OH, so I have a little line going off to one side with my OH, and then I have a CH2CH3 as well. So that's going to look similar to what we've got going on here. I'm going to have, here's my first CH2, and then down here is my CH3. In my next name me, I first identify that my main chain is right along here, and then I start identifying the groups. So I have a C double bond O on the end, that's a carbonyl group. Carbonyl group that's on the end means that this is an aldehyde. And I know I need to start counting from this end. And I also know that this means I'm going to have a suffix of Al at the end. So if I'm counting from this carbon, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 total carbons. And I know that the prefix for 5 is pent. I don't have anything else special on the actual chain, no double or triple bonds, but I do have a few things coming off of the main chain. Right here, I have a methyl group on carbon number 4, and right here, I have a methyl group on carbon number 3. And being the lazy organic chemist that I am, I want to combine those two when I write the final name. So rather than having a 3-methyl, 4-methyl, what I'll do is call it 3, 4 dimethyl, di meaning the 2. And then I have my main chain with the aldehyde on it is going to be pentan al. Okay, the first thing that I notice in this one is that I have an ether, and I know an ether has an O, R, R prime, and that R and R prime are the pentyl and the propyl. Notice that these are in alphabetical order, so PE versus PR. So we always have our ethers in alphabetical order, like so many other things in organic naming. So my easiest way to draw this is by starting with that knowledge that ether has O right there in the middle. So I'm just going to draw an O to start with. And then I'm going to look at my 2 different groups. The pentyl has 5 carbons in a row. So we'll start there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And a propyl is with 3 in a row. Change my carbon color here. So we've got 1, 2, 3, and I just have to fill in all of my hydrogens. And then from here, we'll also do the line angle diagram. Okay, the line angle diagram, I imagine that each carbon is a dot on the end of a line. So here's my first carbon, second carbon, and third carbon. And then I'm going to go up just part of the way and put my oxygen here because there's no carbon associated with it. And I'm going to go down to get to the second part of my line. Here's my next carbon, and I said that there's 5 in this row, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. In our next Name Me, I look at the main chain here. And the only thing that is odd about this main chain is that this carbon on the end has both a hydroxyl, that's the OH, and a carbonyl, that's the C double bond O, group attached to it. So I know right off the bat, if I have one carbon that has both a carbonyl and a hydroxyl attached to it, that this is called actually a whole thing carboxylic acid group, or a carboxyl group, and we have a carboxylic acid. And so I just need to count how many of my carbons I have. So this is my carbon 1, because I always start counting from where that double bond OOH is. 2, 3, and 4. 4 I know is bute. And then I put it all together. I know that carboxylic acids, the end of their name, are oic acid. So I have bute N-oic acid. In our next Draw Me, I wrote the name in 2 different ways. Both are appropriate. You see right off the bat in both the pent, and pent means 5 carbons in a row. So I'm going to start with that. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then I see that I have a dione or a dione here. And anytime I see O-N-E, I know that I'm dealing with a ketone group, which is a carbonyl, not on an end. Carbon. And in fact, we can see right here from the numbers that they are on the 2nd and the 3rd carbon. So my typical way of counting is from left to right. So this would be my 1st carbon, my 2nd carbon, my 3rd carbon, my 4th carbon, and that 5th carbon. And I have a double bond O on the 2nd carbon and on the 3rd carbon. So that's my 2,3 dione. And then I just have to put in the rest of my hydrogens. So this carbon needs 3 more hydrogens so that it has 4 bonds. This carbon already has 4 bonds. This carbon already has 4 bonds. This one doesn't. It needs 2 more hydrogens. And this carbon needs 3 more hydrogens to be satisfied. Now, if I'm doing a line angle diagram of this, I remember that each of the carbons is like the end of a line or a node. So here's my 1st carbon, 2nd carbon, 3rd carbon, 4th carbon, and 5th carbon. And on my 2nd, so 1, 2, and 3rd, I have a double bonded O. Okay, I see in this Name Me that I have an O in the row as well as a carbonyl group attached to the carbon that's attached to that O that's in the middle of the group. So this right off the bat tells me that I have an ester. And so I look at the different parts of the ester. So starting out, I see this CH2, CH3 is part of the oxygen on the side, and this is what I call my methyl group, or my IL group. And I have to look at the number of carbons in it, 1, 2, to know my prefix, and my prefix for 2 is eth. So I have an ethyl. Oops. Got really excited with my Y's there. There we go. My ethyl. And then I have the other section of this, which includes this carbon here that has the carbonyl group with it. And I have to count that number of carbons. I have 1, 2, 3. I know the prefix for 3 is prop. So it's propanoate. Because the part that has that double bonded O with it gets the suffix of -ate. And that is my ester.